What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Motorfest. So in today's video, I did want to revisit the lovely 300 Super Sport Divine Edition. This car was, of course, added recently in the Season 2 update, which, of course, was going to be 3 months into the life cycle here of Motorfest. So I can't understand why, though, like all of the vehicles back in Season 9 before, were not going to be added into this game until now. I also do want to mention, by the way, guys, if you are having issues seeing these vehicles transfer over, at least right when getting on this game after the recent Season 2 update, do not panic because I had the exact same problem. It probably took me around like 2.5 to 3 hours before they did show up. I then logged on to the game and actually got the message for them. So I would recommend waiting a bit before they actually do show up that way. I would also say, guys, do not buy the vehicles until they actually show up. And the main reason why I also wanted to mention this is because I did not have any of my cars at all, guys, from the Season 9 update. I mean, I did not have the RS3 or even the RS7 either. So I was like, you know what, let me just buy the RS2 for the Summit. And who knows, maybe later on I might get my cars back then. And it does actually turn out I, of course, did actually get them around 2 to 3 hours later. So if you guys do not have the vehicles in your inventory yet, I would recommend waiting a bit because you will most likely get them. I can't understand the frustration though because you cannot buy this vehicle in Motorfest yet. So I would say a lot of players are of course going to want the lovely 300 Super Sport Divine Edition. I mean, this car looks absolutely incredible. Also, guys, I'm going to say this, by the way, stopping right now, and actually take a better look at this vehicle here being in Motorfest compared to like the Crew 2 before, which of course that game was going to be on like a different engine, but I have to admit, guys, this is probably going to be the best looking Bugatti in this game, which I would most likely say everybody would probably agree with. I'm also not parked in a very good place, so the AI are kind of getting annoyed with me, but we really can't agree on how good this car actually looks, guys. Like, I love the body kit on this vehicle, and the white rims with, like, the blue B on the side there look amazing. And, of course, it also matches, like, the blue stripes on this Bugatti, so I really do hope everybody did indeed get this car back in the day. And, of course, they can also drive this thing around in Motorfest. Now, a few things I do want to go over, though, so I did adjust the settings a bit on this thing to, of course, actually make this car turn a bit better than it was stock, which, by the way, it wasn't all that great before. Now, I do want to go over a few things, though, guys. I'm sure the biggest question right now, or even like the elephant in the room, is this Bugatti going to be as fast as it was in the Crew 2 before? And unfortunately, that is going to be a no. Now, I have to admit, I am kind of upset about this, but at the same time, though, if we had a hypercar doing 335 miles an hour, that would most likely be an issue not only for like grand races, which by the way, that is probably going to be an issue in itself. And I would say throwing in a car that's going to be that fast is probably going to be insanely broken. And I would most likely say everybody would probably run that vehicle for everything. I really should turn off the skills, that way they're, not in my way. But I do have to admit, guys, having a car going that fast would by far be a big issue, especially in like PvP and stuff like that. But we also have something like the Summits as well, so seeing a car do 335 miles an hour is most likely going to be a big problem when it does come to like balancing. So I do understand that. Now, if you are wondering, so I was testing this vehicle out before on some of the highways. I was able to hit around 297 to maybe 300 miles per hour with it, which of course is basically going to be the going rate for every hypercar right now. And I would say basically all of them have the exact same top speed, or at least similar, which I would actually say, guys, in a good way is probably going to be a very positive change. And I do feel like a lot of people might end up being a bit mixed on it, but I would like to explain why this actually is. So we all do know, guys, back in the Crew 2, every hypercar did, let's say, 300 and like 20 or so miles an hour basically all of the time, all day. And of course, we also had most of the Bugattis hitting like almost 330. So back then, guys, most of the hypercars you would probably see were, of course, going to be a Bugatti. And that would most likely come down to those cars actually hitting 300 miles an hour with ease. And I would say that was probably why most of the hypercars back then were even being used. For example, guys, a lot of the Pagani's back then were basically kind of useless. So I would say having this the way they are now here in Motorfest is probably better. And I do feel like it's probably going to be that much better for like balancing purposes. So I do feel like it's probably going to have a lot of mixed opinions on it. Having every single vehicle have a very similar top speed can do that. But I really have to admit, guys, I do feel like this was probably the best way to do it. similar to like the Street Tier 1 and the Tier 2 classes having a very similar top speed as well, even like the rally rate and stuff like that, so I do feel like it was probably like the best approach to it. Now I have to admit guys, even though the Bugatti here is only going to do around 300, which by the way, I am trying to get on a better road for that, which I am pretty close to the better highway. I would probably say, guys, even at 300 miles an hour, the Divine Edition is still amazing. Now, one thing I have been noticing in Motorfest, which I will indeed do a lot more testing on this here in the near future, that is going to come down to how much better these cars are actually going to be based on their acceleration compared to actually having like an insanely high top speed before, which by the way, guys, right now I'm hitting 306 miles an hour, which surprisingly I don't think I've ever gotten this car to that speed. So if you are running something like a Nitro Chemist set on this thing, that is probably going to be pretty dang impressive, and I cannot drive. This is, let's go backwards and act like that never happened, shall we? I really do think, though, a lot of people are most likely going to aim toward using different hypercars now, which, funnily enough, I've also been doing the exact same thing. Like, recently, guys, in basically every summit that does have an escape, I've actually been running the Lamborghini Countach on all of them, even though you are most likely going to see the Gendo Dici because that thing is absolutely incredible. It's probably going to be one of the best handling cars in the entire hypercar class. Like, that Bugatti really is going to be that good, and I will most likely make a future video for that car as well. I may end up even testing out many of the Bugattis and stuff like that, like against each other, but even if you guys were expecting the 300 Super Sport Divine Edition to actually hit 330 again, unfortunately that is not going to be the case here in Motorfest, but even with that, guys, I have to admit the acceleration on this car is honestly bonkers, and it really does make this thing insanely fun to use. Plus, it also does well over 300 miles an hour pretty easily. Like, I also do want to mention, by the way, right now I am not running a Chemist set on this. I am currently running a Fame Magnet set, which, by the way, guys, is probably going to be one of my favorite things ever. If you are wondering, by the way, I can still easily hit 300 miles an hour all day with that. I don't actually have to use a Chemist set on this thing, at least compared to like the Crew 2 before. You basically had to have one of those to, of course, go around 320 miles an hour, so like, I would probably say, guys, it is going to be a nice change having the cars more balanced out. That way you could actually run like different sets on them and still compete, but also be insanely fast and like grinding out events and stuff like that. So either way probably is going to be a win-win. But I would like to know what you guys think about the Divine Edition in the comments below. So far I'm having a great time running this car here in Motorfest.